Get right down to the real nitty-gritty now. 1, 2, nitty-gritty now, yeah, boo. Nitty-gritty now, ooh.
Hola, Spaniard here, and today I'm going to get down to the nitty-gritty of banknotes. Now, way back when people were passing gold and silver amongst themselves, and that was the money, someone hit upon the idea of placing that precious metal with a goldsmith, alright? And the goldsmiths were the forerunners of today's bankers, alright? Goldsmiths became the bankers, alright? But goldsmiths used to deal in gold. They used to work with gold, and they had safes. So someone hit upon the idea of taking their gold and silver and placing it on deposit with a goldsmith, because the goldsmith had a safe and could keep it safe. Big mistake. But put that to the side. It happened. So when these people deposited their gold and silver with the goldsmith issued a receipt. And the receipt contained a promise to pay back the gold or the silver to the person that had deposited it. Do you get me? Then the people started passing around these bits of paper as if they were gold or silver, because they could operate safe in the knowledge that the goldsmith was in possession of the gold and the silver, and he would keep it safe, right? So this became the currency, right? Representative of the money. And this was being passed around. Now, the goldsmith was a clever dude, all right? Very clever, very shrewd, all right? Like a fox in a hen house, yeah? And he realized something. You see, only 10% of deposits were being removed in any one given day by the people that had placed the deposits with him. And that meant he had an opportunity. Because what if he issued notes for gold he didn't have? As long as he had enough gold in reserve to cover the gold that was being withdrawn, in other words 10%, then he could lend out bits of paper but get paid back in gold. In other words, he would demand payment in gold. He wanted payment in something that was more valuable than the bit of paper that he'd created as the loan. Do you get me? So someone wants a loan because the banker or the goldsmith is holding all the gold, right? The goldsmith says, yeah, I'll give you a loan. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, how's your father, right? He writes up a piece of paper promising to pay gold, gives this to the person that wants to borrow the money, they go and spend it happily, and still only 10% of his gold reserves are being withdrawn in any one given day, which means that as long as he's careful and manages this well, he can potentially issue another 9 times worth of notes for gold he hasn't got. Hey presto, fractional reserve banking, fractional reserve lending. He only has a fraction in reserve. Do you get me? And as long as there's not a run on the bank, the scam continues. He lends out bits of paper and he demands payback in gold, plus interest, right? It's a beautiful scam. Now, way back when, the people, right, generally speaking, were a lot more with it than we are today, okay? And in 1925, after the First World War, a whole host of people demanded that they could redeem their gold or buy back their gold from the Bank of England. And the Gold Standard Act was enacted, okay? People wanted their gold back. But people started withdrawing their gold. They started exchanging these things for gold. Come to 1928, and the Currency and Banknotes Act was passed, in which certain workers and certain trades, it was determined by the government that they should be paid in legal tender. In other words, notes, paper. And there was uproar. Apparently the people rioted. So how would the government, in tandem with the banks, deal with this? Well, 2 ways. Firstly, they created a distraction. Hey presto, the Great Depression. All right? People were more worried about how they were going to put food into the bellies of their families and themselves than they were about taking on the banks. But secondly, in 1931, the Gold Standard Amendment Act was passed, and it was forced through Parliament by the Chancellor of the day. And the Chancellor had approached Parliament in a way which was in violation of their own rules, really, because he put through an emergency measure without having first tabled it before Parliament to actually get permission to table the emergency measure, if you get my drift. And so anyway, this Chancellor painted a picture of woe and potential catastrophe if they didn't all vote to temporarily suspend the link between these bits of paper and the gold which backed them at the time. Now, I don't have to tell you that that was actually passed through Parliament, and the temporary measure was approved, and that temporary measure to sever the ties between gold and paper has now lasted something like 85 years. But why was it a national emergency? Well, it wasn't a national emergency. It was in truth a banking emergency. Because if people kept withdrawing their gold from the bank and kept demanding the gold, the banks wouldn't be able to deliver the gold because there wasn't enough gold, because the bankers had been pulling a scam. Now, the politicians had to be acting in one of two ways. Either they were completely negligent of how money works, right? Or they were in on it. And I cannot believe that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who tabled the Gold Standard Amendment Act motion, I cannot believe that he didn't know how it worked. So therefore, I am concluding and I am deducing that he was in on it and he sold you out. So here's the deal. The bankers are quite happy with you handing round bits of paper. What makes this real? Well, your confidence, your faith, and your belief. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate that this stuff has purchasing power, but that's only because the retailers that have goods to sell believe that this is worth something and are confident that they can use these things to obtain other things, other goods and services. Now here's the deal. This is a piece of paper and this is gold, right? This is a piece of paper and this is gold. This is a piece of paper and this is gold. Whether you accept this in exchange for a table and chairs, a taxi drive, babysitting services, going to work and doing XYZ, is up to you. Whether you accept this in exchange for your services and your time is up to you. The fact of the matter is this. Before September 1931, the Bank of England, in tandem with the government, would allow you to exchange bits of paper, legal tender, for gold. All right, that was it. But then they stopped it, and the temporary measure has lasted 85 years. Okay, so question. What happens if you now decide to spend your bits of paper or exchange your bits of paper for gold or silver? Well, in effect, you're doing what you was allowed to do before 1931, except you're doing it via a different company, via a different avenue. You're not utilising the Bank of England because the Bank of England can't let you do that because the Bank of England doesn't have enough gold to back all of these notes. Where the Bank of England and the government have stopped you from exchanging bits of paper for gold or silver, you can now perform the same transaction by simply going to a private company. I don't know whether it's the same kind of deal that you would have got way back when. Obviously there's a lot of inflation that's got to be taken into account. In fact, I sneakingly suspect that the true value of this is way above what it's currently trading at. But the point is this, okay? We ourselves have gotten involved with a company. I have been buying some gold. My friends, my family are buying gold, all right? And whilst you may not want to put everything you got into gold or silver, you might want to put some. Now, remember, any investments can go up and down in value. Gold can go up and down in value. These notes go up and down in value. But every year with inflation, the purchasing power goes down. Guaranteed, it goes down. That's what inflation does to the buying power and the spending power behind these notes. It diminishes it. It's an additional tax, as if they're not taking enough tax already. Anyhow, I hope that explains the importance of perhaps buying some gold and silver. Until next time, big, big love.
Let's get right